before we begin, take a moment to notice how quiet it is around you. The kind of quiet where every small sound feels too loud and every shadow feels like it's watching. Tonight's stories come from Reddit, posted in the early hours of the morning by people who needed to tell someone what they experienced. Not for attention, not for fame, but because keeping it to themselves felt worse than sharing it with strangers. These are stories of moments that didn't make sense at first, of instincts ignored, of ordinary nights that took a turn and never fully ended, encounters that still linger in the back of the mind long after the screen goes dark. Some of these stories have explanations, others don't. As you listen, remember these events happened to real people in places just like yours. Familiar streets, quiet homes, normal routines. And that's what makes them unsettling. So dim the lights, put on your headphones, and try not to look over your shoulder. Because once these stories start, you might not feel alone anymore. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe if you end up making it through this horror fest. And enjoy. Our first story comes to us from Grand Theft Motto, and the title of this one is Something Walks Whistling Past My House Every Night at 3:03. You'll have to check your windows after this one, because this one is going to get creepy. So grab your blanket and get settled in, and let's dive into this story. Every night, no matter the weather, something walks down our street whistling softly. You can only hear it if you're in the living room or the kitchen when they walk by, and it always starts at exactly 3:03. The sound starts faint, somewhere near the beginning of the lane near the Carson place. We're towards the middle of the street, so the whistling moves past us before fading away in the direction of the cul-de-sac. When I was younger, my sister and I would sneak into the kitchen some nights to listen. Mom and Dad didn't like that, and we'd catch hell if they found us out there. But they were never too hard on us, since we always stuck to the one big rule. Don't try to look at whatever was whistling. My neighborhood is a funny place. I've lived here since I was 6, and I love it. The houses are small but well kept, good-sized yards, plenty of places to roam. There are a lot of other kids here my age. I turned 13 back in October. We grew up together and would always play foursquare in the cul-de-sac or roam around from back porch to back porch in the summer. This was a good place to grow up. I'm old enough to see it. And there's only the two strange things here: the night whistling and the good luck. The whistling never bothered me much. Like I said, I couldn't even hear it from my bedroom. But Mom and Dad don't like talking about it, so I've stopped asking questions. My dad is a strong guy, tall and calm. He has an accent since he moved to the US as a kid. His family, my grandparents, they're from the islands. That's what they call it. My dad, the only time he isn't so calm is if the whistler comes up. He talks a little quicker then. Eyes move faster. And he tells us not to think about it so much, and to always remember the one rule, the big rule. Don't try to look outside when the whistler goes past. Not that we could look even if we wanted. See, there are shutters on the inside of every window, thick pieces of heavy canvas that pull down from the top and latch to the bottom of the window frame. Each latch even has a small lock about the size of what you'd find on a diary. My dad locks those shutters every night before we all go to bed and keeps the key in his room. My mom, I don't know what she thinks about the whistling. I've seen her out in the living room before at 3:03 when the sound starts. I could see her if I cracked my door open just an inch to peek. She's not out there often. At least I haven't caught her much. But once or twice a month, I think she sits out there on our big red couch just listening. The whistler has the same tune every night. It's cheerful. Da-da-da-da-da-dum. Da-da-da-da-da-dum. Remember how I said there are two odd things about where I live? Well, besides our night whistler, everyone in my neighborhood is really lucky. It's hard to explain, and Dad doesn't like us talking about this part much either. But good things just seem to happen to people around here a lot. Usually, it's small things, winning a radio contest, or getting an unexpected promotion at work, or finding some arrowheads buried in the yard. You know, the authentic kind. The weather is pretty good, and there's no crime, and everybody's gardens bloom extra bright in the fall. A million little blessings, I've heard my mom say about living here. But the main reason we stay here, why we moved here in the first place, is my sister Nola. She was born very sick, something with her lungs. We couldn't even bring her home when she was born, only visit her in the hospital. She was so small, I remember, small even compared to the other Bobbies. A machine had to breathe for her. We moved into our house here to be closer to the hospital. As soon as we moved here, Nola started getting better. The doctors couldn't figure it out. They chalked it up to whatever they were doing. But we all could tell they were confused. But my parents knew, even I knew, Nola getting better was just another of the million little blessings we got for living in our neighborhood. So that's why we stayed even after we found out that. For every small miracle that happens here every day, now and then some bad things happen. But they only happen if you look for the whistler. See, our neighborhood has a welcoming committee. They show up with macaroni casserole and a gift basket and a manila folder whenever someone new moves in. They're very friendly. 4 people showed up when we moved in 7 years ago. The committee made small talk, gave me a Snickers bar, and took turns holding Nola. It was her first week out of the hospital, so they were extra careful. Then the committee asked to speak to my parents in private, so I was sent to my room, where I still managed to hear nearly every word. The welcoming committee told my parents about how nice the neighborhood was, really exceptionally, hard to explain kind of nice. And then they told my parents about the even harder to explain whistling that happened every morning at 3:03 and ended at the tick of 3:05. The group, our new neighbors, warned my parents that the whistling was quiet, would never harm or hurt us, as long as we didn't look for what was making the sound. This part they stressed, and I pushed my ear into the door, straining to hear them. People who went looking for the whistler had their luck change, sometimes tragically. A black cloud would hang over anyone that looked. Anything that could go wrong would. The manila envelope the committee brought over contained newspaper clippings, stories about car crashes and ruined lives, public deaths, and freak accidents. Not everyone dies, I heard the head of the committee tell my dad. But the life goes out of them. Even if they live, there's no light in them ever again, no presence. My mom, I could tell she wasn't taking it seriously. She kept asking if this was some prank they play on new neighbors. At one point, my mom got angry, accused the committee of trying to scare us out of our new home, asked them if they were racist on account of my dad being from the islands. My dad calmed her down, told her he could tell our new neighbors were sincere and they were just trying to help us. He explained that he grew up hearing these kinds of stories from his mom, and that he knew there were strange things that walked among us. Some of those strange things were good, and some were bad, but most were just different. After the committee left, Dad went out to the hardware store, bought the canvas blinds, the latches, and the locks, and installed them on every window in the house after dinner. That first night in our new house, I crept out of my room at 3 a.m. only to find my dad awake, sitting on the living room couch, holding my baby sister. My dad held up his finger in a SHH motion, but patted the couch next to him. I sat, and we waited. At exactly 3:03, we heard the whistling. Da-da-da-da-da-dum. Da-da-da-da-da-dum. It came and it went just like our neighbors said. The whistling returns each night, and we never look, and we enjoy our million little blessings every day. Nola breathes on her own, and she's grown into a strong, clever girl. My dad even joined the welcoming committee. We don't get new neighbors often. Why would anyone want to leave? But when a new family moves in, my dad and the committee bring them macaroni casserole, a gift basket, and the manila folder. I can always tell by the look on my dad's face when he comes back if the family took the committee seriously, or if we'd be getting new neighbors again very soon. Not long ago, a family moved in across the street from us. The previous owner, Miss Maddie, passed away at age 105. She lived a good, long life. Our new neighbors seemed like they'd fit in just fine. They believed the welcoming committee, took my dad's advice about the locking shutters since they had a young child of their own. Whatever newspaper clippings were in that manila envelope, whatever evidence, my dad never let us see. But I imagine it must have been awfully convincing, since our neighbors got along with no issues for the first month. One night, when our new neighbors had to leave town, they sent their son, Holden, to stay with us. He was 12, a year under me in school. I didn't know him well before that night, but as soon as his parents dropped him off after dinner, I could tell it was going to be a bad time. Do you know who is always out there whistling every night? Holden asked the moment the adults left the room. The three of us were sitting in the den. Some Disney movie playing idly on the television. My sister and I exchanged a glance. "We don't talk about that," I said. "I think it's that weirdo that lives in the big yellow house on the corner, Holden said. Mr. Tolles, my sister asked. No way, he's really nice. Holden shrugged. Must be a psycho killer then. Nola tensed. We don't talk about it, I repeated. Let's go in my room and play Nintendo. We spent the next few hours playing games, eating popcorn, and then watching movies. A typical sleepover, but I could see Holden was getting antsy. After my parents had wished us a good night, locked the blinds, and gone to bed, Holden stood up from his beanbag and walked over to where Nola and I were sitting on my bed. Have you ever even tried looking? He asked. It's nearly time. Like most sleepovers, we'd conveniently ignored any suggestion of a bedtime. I was shocked to see he was right. It was almost 3 a.m. I sighed, we don't. See, I can't. I can't even try to look because my dad locks the blinds every night and hides the key. He continued, ignoring me. So does our dad, said Nola. No, replied Holden. No, he doesn't. You saw him do it, I said, a little sharper than I meant to sound. Holden grinned. Your dad locks the blinds, yeah, but he doesn't hide the key. He keeps it right on his normal keychain. So, I asked, worried I already knew what he would say next. Because I had noticed that my dad didn't bother hiding the key anymore after all of these years. Because he knew we took it seriously. So, after your dad locked up, but before your parents went to bed, I went to the bathroom. And on my way, I may have peeked into their room, and I may have seen your dad's key chain on his nightstand, and I maybe went and borrowed the key to blinds. Nola and I stared, and his grin only grew wider. You're lying, I said. Holden shrugged. You can check if you want. Just open your parents' door and look. You'll see his keychain right there on the nightstand. Stay here, I told both of them. Don't move a muscle. I hurried over to my parents' room, but hesitated at the door. If Holden wasn't lying, my dad would be angry. Beyond angry. I was scared thinking about it, but more scared of an open window with the whistler right outside. I opened the door, barely an inch, and looked in, but it was too dark to see. Taking a deep breath, I walked into the room. 2 steps into the dark, I froze. The whistling started, and I could hear it clearly from my parents' room. I never realized, but they must have heard the sound every night since we moved into the house. They never told us. I don't think I could have slept through it. I stood there, listening to the whistling come closer, unsure whether I should turn on a light or call out for my dad. Soft sounds from the living room brought me back to reality. Nola, I yelled, running out of my parents' room. Holden and Nola were standing near the front door, next to a window. Holden wasn't lying. I could see him fumbling with the lock on one of the blinds. I heard a click. He did have the key. Holden let out a quick laugh. Nola stood next to him, hunched up, afraid but maybe curious. The whistling was right outside our house now. I think I made a sound, called out. I can't remember. Time felt frozen, clock hands nailed to the face. but I found myself moving. I'm not fast. I've never been athletic. Somehow, though, I covered the space between myself and Nola in a moment. My eyes were locked on her, but I heard Holden pull the blind all the way down so it could release. I heard the snap of it start to raise, and I heard the whistling just on the other side of the window. But I had my arms around Nola, and I turned us so she was facing away from the window. At the same time, I jammed my eyes shut. The blind whipped open. The whistling stopped. I felt Nola shaking in my arms. "Don't look, okay," I told her. "Don't turn around." We were positioned so that she was facing back towards the hallway, and I was facing the window. My eyes were still closed. I felt her nod into my shoulder. I reached out with the arm not holding Nola and tried to touch Holden. My hand brushed against his arm. He was shaking worse than Nola. "Holden," I asked. Silence. I reached past him and gingerly felt for the window, eyes still sealed shut. The glass was cold against my fingertips, colder than it should have been for the time of year. I moved my hand up the window, searching for the string to the blind. The glass began to get warmer the further I reached, and there was a gentle hum feeding back into my fingertips. I tried not to think about what might be on the other side of the window. Finally, I touched the string and yanked the blinds shut. I opened my eyes. In the dim light leaking out from the kitchen, I could make out Holden, pale and small, staring at the now closed window. "Holden," I asked again. He turned towards me and he screamed. Everything became a flurry of motion. Lights sparked to life in the hall, then the living room. My parents' footsteps thudded across the hardwood floor. I didn't turn to look back at them. My eyes were glued to Holden. He was pale, had bit his lip so hard there was a thin red line of blood running down his chin, and he'd wet himself. "What happened?" my dad asked from behind me. I managed to swivel away from Holden and look back. He looked. I'd never seen my dad scared before, but I saw it that night, in that moment. An old, ugly terror stitched on his face. A parent's fear. "Just Holden," he mouthed to me. I nodded yes. My dad let out a breath. He looked so relieved, I nearly expected him to cheer. But then he turned to Holden, and my dad's face changed. I wondered if he felt bad for feeling good, that Holden was the only one that looked. There was a knock at the door. We all froze. Holden whimpered. "Don't answer it," my mom said. She stood at the threshold of the hall. I'd always thought she was a skeptic and just humored my dad about the windows and the whistler. But that night, we were all believers. I noticed that both of my parents held baseball bats they must have taken from their bedroom. The knock came again, a little louder this time. "Please don't open the door," Holden whispered. My dad walked over to him, hugged him close. "We won't," my dad promised, still holding his bat. "Nothing is coming in here tonight." Thud, thud, thud. This time, the knocking was loud enough to rattle the door. Holden screamed again, and Nola clutched her arms around my neck. My mom came over and knelt down next to us, wrapping my sister and me close. Thud, thud, thud. Call the police, my mom whispered to my dad. The knocking instantly stopped. My dad looked over his shoulder at us. Do you think? He was cut off by frantic knocking that trailed off to a polite tap, tap, tap. Police, something said from the other side of the door. The voice from outside sounded exactly like my mom, like a parrot repeating the words back to her. Police, call the police. Tap, 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 police. My mom pulled us closer. Police, 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 police. Please stop, I heard her whisper. I don't think calling them will help, my dad said. How will we know when they're the ones at the door? The knocking came back harder than before. The door shook. Then it stopped. After a long moment, I heard the knocking again, but it was coming from our back door. We all turned together towards the back door, but the knocking immediately returned to the front door. Front to back, back to front. Loud, then quiet, then loud again. Suddenly, the sound was coming from both doors at once, big, heavy blows like a sledgehammer. Then something started rapping against all of the windows in the house, then the walls. It was like we were living inside a drum with a dozen people trying to play at once. Or we were a turtle, and something was attempting to claw us out of our shell. Stop, Holden yelled. The knocking died. I won't tell, Holden said, staring at the door. I promise I won't tell anyone what I saw. Just please go away. We waited for nearly a minute. Then we heard it. A soft tap, tap, tap coming from the window Holden had looked through earlier. Holden started to cry, sobbing like a prisoner watching gallows being built outside their cell. My dad held him, brushed his hair, but never lied to him. Never told him things would be okay. The tapping at the window went on for the rest of the night. We huddled together in the living room for I don't know how long. Eventually, my mom tried to take us kids into my room while my dad stayed to watch the door. But the second we moved into my bedroom, the knocking came back, so loud it was possible to ignore. I was afraid the door couldn't take it. We went back to the living room and the knocking stopped. Only the tap, tap, tap on the window remained. None of us slept that night. The tapping stopped around 7 a.m. That's about the time the sun comes up here. We waited another 2 hours before my dad opened the blinds from one window. He made us all go back to my parents' bedroom first. I heard him open the door, then come back in. Okay, he told us, it's done. Holden's parents came back around lunchtime. My mom and dad walked Holden over to his house, and they all went inside for quite a while. Nola and I watched from the window. She stuck to me the whole day, right at my side, sometimes holding my hand. When my parents came back, they looked grim, but wouldn't tell us what they said to Holden's family. It was a Sunday, so we all spent the day together, ordered pizza, and watched movies. That night, everyone slept in my room. Nola and my mom in the bed with me. My dad in a chair he'd pulled over. There was no knocking that night or any night since. We didn't see much of Holden or his parents for the rest of that week. But by Thursday, there was a moving truck in their driveway. Nola and I watched them packing up the whole afternoon after school. What sticks with me most is how tired Holden and his parents looked. All three had the same pallor, grim mouths, and lightless eyes. Even from across the street, I could tell something was very wrong. Holden and his family were gone before sunset. I remember what the original welcoming committee said to my parents when we moved in. Not everyone who looks at the Whistler dies, but even those that live have the light go out of them, and the rest of their lives are full of misfortune. A million little tragedies. I think Holden's parents must have looked, either to comfort him if they didn't believe, or share the burden if they did. I watch Nola some days, happy and young and alive, and I wonder if I'd been slower, if she'd looked out the window that night, would I have looked too? To comfort her, to share that burden. I'm glad I don't have to find out. We still live in that house, in that neighborhood. We still hear our Whistler walking past every night. The blessings, the luck, the good things here are too good to leave. But we're careful. We don't have friends over to spend the night anymore. And my dad hides the key to the blinds very, very well. Not that I've gone looking. Some things you just don't need to look for. If you aren't already shaken after that story, I have many more for you coming up. So let's go straight into the next. Our next story is titled, My Sugar Daddy Asks Me for Weird Favors, and comes to us from Pat BP. Let's get into it. His Tinder profile said he was 45, but he looked to be in his early 30s at most. Looking for a sugar baby, $700 weekly, no sex. It sounded too good to be true, but as a broke university student, I was willing to take my chances. I swiped right, and Tinder let me know it was a match. His message came seconds later. Hey there, sweetheart. I cringed at that word. I hated it. But $700 was $700. So I sucked it up and replied, Hey. His name was Jack, and he told me he owned his own business, although he never specified what kind of business it was. We talked for a while before he asked me for my Venmo to send me the first payment. After a few minutes, I got the notification. I stared at the $700 for at least 20 minutes, expecting to wake up from a dream at any second. But it wasn't a dream. You still there? I clicked on the message. Yeah, sorry. If you don't mind me asking, what are you looking for in return? I stared at the chat until he replied, I'm just looking for you to do a few favors for me. That sounded like it was going to be sexual to me. Like what? For example, the first thing I need you to do is pick up a delivery for me. That sounded innocent enough, but I was still expecting there to be some kind of twist. $700 to pick up a package. Come on, even I wasn't that naive. From the post office or something. No, I'll send you the address, but I'd rather not do this through Tinder. You got Kick, or you can give me your number. Kick. What was this? 2011. I decided to give him my number instead, and he texted me the address immediately, followed by the address to his house. where I would have to drop off the package. I'm not home right now, but there's a key on the bottom of the blue flower pot near the door. Go inside and put the package on the coffee table in the living room. Make sure that you lock the door when you go inside the house, and then lock it again when you leave. I grabbed my car keys and wallet and got into my car, putting the address into Google Maps. Got it, Amwa. My phone buzzed as I backed out of my driveway. I'm serious. Lock the door both times, please. I thought that was a little excessive, but I promised him that I would. The house looked abandoned. It had a broken chain link fence around it, with a small door that was hanging onto dear life. It stuck out like a sore thumb, surrounded by houses that were a lot nicer than this one in comparison. You here for Jack's shit? I looked up to see a man standing in the open doorway of the house. He took up almost the entire space, his head skimming the top of the door frame. He was huge in height and muscles, and his entire torso was covered in tattoos. Yeah, I guess, I replied, not moving from my spot on the sidewalk. Stay right there, he said. I did. I actually don't think I would have moved if he had asked me to. I looked around and realized that there was no one else on the street. I was a 21-year-old woman alone in the street. I gripped my car keys. A few minutes later, the man came back out carrying a cardboard box. It was about the size of a shoebox, but stained and damp on some of the corners. Can you open your car? He asked. I opened the trunk, not wanting that inside on my car seats, and he set it in. All right, there you go, he said. Thanks, I replied. I walked around to the driver's side of the car and opened the door. Oh, and one more thing, he said. I looked at him. Watch out, he said. I didn't reply. I blasted my music as I drove to Jack's house. Hopping it would drown out my anxiety. It didn't. I parked my car in the stone driveway and stayed inside the car, admiring the house. It was a huge house with stone pillars on the front porch and the greenest grass I had ever seen in my life. I turned the car off and got out. I grabbed the package and walked to the front door, getting the key from where he said it would be. I opened the door and stepped in, closing it behind me. I thought about what he had said, about locking the door when I got inside. I thought that was a little overboard, but as I stared at the closed door, something made me reach out and lock it. I walked inside, my feet cushioned by the thick maroon carpet, and admired the inside of the house. All the furniture was wooden and looked incredibly expensive. I would probably finish school a dozen times with the money that it took to furnish this place. I set the package down on the coffee table, and as I walked back to the door, I heard a phone ringing from somewhere inside the house. I froze. In my pocket, my phone buzzed. I took it out to look. Don't answer any calls that aren't from Marvin. I put my phone back and followed the sound of the phone, poking my head into a few different rooms before I found it in an office. I walked over to the desk and looked at the caller ID. Incoming call from Jack. That was odd. I grabbed my phone to look at the message again. I was starting to get a little bit creeped out and decided I wouldn't answer, just to be safe, and left the house, remembering to lock the door as I left. I've done a few more favors for Jack since then. I drove a BMW to a random park in another city, only to get out and drive a different car back to Jack's house. He had me meet one of his employees at lunch, who then gave me a briefcase to deliver to the first house I had gone to, and told me he would know if I looked inside. On several occasions, he asked me to drive down to that same house and stay with the guy, whose name was Julio, for a certain amount of time. In total, I've made around $3,500. Most recently, Jack asked me to stay in his house overnight. I woke up to a text message from him. I need you to spend the night at my house. I hadn't ever seen him in person, but I had talked to him on the phone a few times. He proceeded to tell me he would pay me $1,000 to spend the night at his house, provided that I followed a few rules. I drove to his house that evening. The driveway was empty, and it normally was, but the porch light was on. I walked up, unlocked the door, went inside, and then locked it again. Everything in the house looked the same. Jack had told me over the phone that he would leave the list of rules on the dining room table. I set all my stuff down in the living room. My bags looked like garbage compared to the fancy furniture in there. I wandered into the kitchen and then to the dining room. Sure enough, there was a piece of paper on the wooden table, held down by an empty glass. Lock the door when you come in. Only answer calls from Marvin. Don't turn on any faucets between 9 p.m. and 11 p.m. Don't open the door for anyone, no matter who they say they are, after 10 p.m. If the door to the closet at the end of the hall is open, sleep in the library. If closed, sleep in any of the bedrooms. The gardener comes at midnight. If he starts knocking on the windows, hide. Turn the TV on and let it play on static through the night. Do not forget to do this. Help yourself to anything in the fridge. I'll pay you in the morning. Good night. I made sure to follow all the rules. To be honest, I was regretting my decision. But seeing as I was already here and I was getting paid, I decided to stay anyway. I figured as long as I followed all the rules, I'd be perfectly fine. Still, it felt a little odd. What was this? A haunted house? Nevertheless, I lounged around the house for a few hours, as I was planning on going to sleep around 9, since that's the time that all the weird shit would begin to happen. At 8:50, I brushed my teeth, using the faucet for the last time before 9. I checked the closet in the hallway, and upon seeing that it was open, I moved my stuff into the library and got ready to sleep on the couch. I locked doors just in case and laid on the couch, scrolling through my phone. I hadn't gotten any more messages from Jack, and I started to think up scenarios and reasons as to why he had such strict, peculiar sets of rules in his house. I had dozed off at some point because, at exactly 10:16 p.m., I was woken up by the doorbell ringing. I was about to get up to check, but then I remembered the rule. Don't open the door for anyone, no matter who they say they are, after 10 p.m. I stayed on the couch, trying not to move, paranoid that they would hear even the slightest sound. It's the police. Open up. I didn't move. Hello, it's the police. Open up or we're coming in. I still didn't move, but I could hear my heartbeat in my ears. There was silence for a while after that. Then the doorbell rang again. Hey, it's Jack. Let me in. It sounded like Jack, but still, I didn't get up. He would have a key, wouldn't he? Why would he need me to let him in? This continued for almost a full hour. Different people would ring the doorbell, announce themselves, and then disappear when I didn't respond. I was finally able to fall asleep, and the gardener never came. When I woke up the next morning, I heard someone in the kitchen. I got up slowly and unlocked the door as quietly as possible, taking my phone with me and walking across the living room and into the kitchen. I stopped at the entrance and peered in. It was Jack. He was standing in front of the stove, stirring something as the coffee machine brewed coffee on the counter behind him. Hey, good morning, he said when he saw me. Hi, I replied, nervous. I hadn't seen him in person before, but he looked exactly like his pictures online. Scrambled eggs, he asked, motioning to the pan with a wooden spoon. Yeah, thanks, I replied, walking over to take the plate from him. I ate my breakfast and drank some coffee in silence. So how was it? He asked. It was okay. Nothing super freaky happened, I replied. Cool, he replied. There was an awkwardness in the room. I think I'm gonna go now. I have class, I trailed off. I didn't, but I really wanted to get out of there. Oh no, yeah, sure. I'll talk to you some other time, he replied. I grabbed my stuff and he walked me to my car. I could see him standing in the driveway, staring at me as I left. When I got home, I unpacked all my stuff and noticed that I still had the list with me. I sat on my bed and read it again. I felt my body tense up as I realized that I had forgotten something. Turn the TV on and let it play on static through the night. Do not forget to do this. Turn the TV on and let it play on static through the night. Do not forget to do this. Do not forget to do this. I stared at the words on the page until they lost meaning. Beside me, my phone buzzed, snapping me back to reality. It was the $1,000 payment. I looked at my phone and then back at the list. Maybe it wasn't an important step. As I was thinking this over, a text from Jack came in. I'm not in town right now. I should be back next week. So you're free from running any more errands for me until then. Just sent the payment. Go do something fun. I stared at the message and read it again and again and once more for good measure. I'm not in town right now. I thought back to this morning and how Jack was in his house. how he gave me breakfast. I'm not in town right now. Within minutes, a new text came in, this time from a number that I didn't recognize. Did you forget to do something? The text was followed by a picture of Jack, or whoever this version of Jack was, standing in front of the TV. I didn't respond. Next came another picture. This one was of the outside of my house. It was followed by another text. Watch out. Whoa, that is an ominous conclusion. If you made it past this story, congrats. But we are not slowing down anytime soon. This next story is on another level to creepy from the last ones, so be prepared. It's titled, My Student Submitted the Most Disturbing Living History Project I've Ever Seen. And it comes to us from a user named Gretel Cat. Like I said, this one is the creepiest so far, so turn your night light on and let's dive in. One of my least favorite parts about being a middle school history teacher is the bullshit living history assignments we give at the end of every school year. Kids are supposed to sit with their grandparents and videotape, voice record, or transcribe their oldest memories for posterity, and for an easy way to bring up their GPA. I have been doing this for 17 years, and when I collected the projects this time around, I assumed they would be as dull, if not duller, than usual. This had not been a particularly bright class, so I went home, poured myself a glass of wine, and prepared for a long night of I only owned 2 pairs of pants when I was your age. And my brother got beat with a newspaper for hitting a baseball into a neighbor's yard. And of course, these projects were peppered with innocent, old person comments that were so horribly sexist and racist you just had to laugh. Now, I had a girl in my class whom I will call Olivia. She was pudgy, quiet, and proved herself a consistent B student. I expected her project to be as unremarkable as her, and perhaps that's why I was so profoundly disturbed by what I witnessed that night. Olivia had submitted 2 discs for some reason, so I began with the one marked interview. My screen hiccuped twice before a grainy image of a living room came into view. The place was a hoarder's hell. Olivia was curled up in an armchair, clutching a notebook and looking like a scared animal. Across from her sat a man with a somber countenance, smoking a cigarette and staring at her expectantly. Go ahead, a woman's voice whispered from behind the camera. Olivia's owlish eyes flashed towards the screen, then back to the man. I am here with my great-uncle Stephen, she began almost inaudibly. He is going to tell us about his oldest memories from being in the army. Great-uncle Stephen looked like he'd rather be in a goddamn trench at the moment. But he waited patiently for the questions to begin. Not surprisingly, Olivia read verbatim from the suggested questions sheet I had handed out to the students. He answered her curtly. Once or twice, I heard her mother whisper, "Speak up, Olivia," from behind the camera. Typical, boring shit. So I was intrigued when Olivia set down the notebook and asked, "Did you like being in the army?" That was totally off script. Great Uncle Stephen emitted a chain smoker's wheeze. Nope. Glad to get out of my town, though. Where did you go? Balkans. Uh-huh, she said. I doubted she knew what the Balkans were, and my suspicion was confirmed when she asked, was Baucus very different from here? Yes. Mom cleared her throat from behind the camera, perhaps encouraging Great Uncle Stephen to be a little more forthcoming. But Olivia seemed genuinely interested. Uncle Stephen, she asked, what is your very worst memory from the army? The old man crushed his cigarette in the ashtray and then slowly lifted himself out of his chair. I'll be back, he mumbled. The camera cut off. When the screen flashed back on, everything was the same except Great Uncle Stephen had several pieces of paper in plastic sleeves laid atop all the crap sitting on his coffee table. One he held in his hand. I was a kid when I enlisted, he said, looking at Olivia. Your brother's age, he told her. Olivia nodded. I never saw combat. Both of my deployments were to cities in Eastern Europe that had been destroyed by civil wars. Everything was a mess. I felt like a janitor for fuck. Saw. Mom coughed. Great Uncle Stephen sighed and looked at his paper. My unit was assigned to a school that had been obliterated by all the violence. Broken windows, caved-in rooms, and for some reason, the part that got to me the most was that the school had been like this for years before we got there. No one had lifted a finger to fix it. I saw kids walk by it on their way to go beg for money, or whatever shit they did. The camera dipped towards the floor as I heard Mom whisper harshly at Great Uncle Stephen. I couldn't make out what she was saying, but it wasn't hard to imagine. Do you want to hear this goddamn story or not? I heard him bark in response. Then you better let me tell it how I want. Mom, Olivia chimed. Please stop interrupting. Are you presenting this in front of the class? No, Mom. We're just handing it in to the teacher. I'm sure he's heard the word shit before. Great Uncle Stephen contributed helpfully. I wasn't a he, as a matter of fact. But other than that, the statement was accurate. The camera was lifted, and after a couple of blurry focus adjustments, the shot was the same as before. I'm talking too much anyway, he grumbled. He lifted the piece of paper in his hand close to his face. In the basement, I found this letter. I didn't know what it said, but I had a buddy of mine translate it. So I'm gonna read it now. And then I'll tell you what I saw in that basement. A chill ran down my spine. Mom zoomed into Great Uncle Stephen and his letter. His palsied hands trembled as he held up the paper. This is what he read. Dear Sir, I never loved my country. So many of these skirmishes are born from patriotism, a power struggle for the shards of a once great empire. But I do not care what name my home has on a map. This fighting is senseless, and I stay as far away from it as I can. It was not these attacks and disorganized violence that took the lives of my wife and child. It was illness. Mercifully, it happened quickly for the baby. Nadia suffered for longer. I watched in horror, knowing I could do nothing for them. My only solace is that I was there for them every step of the way. I stopped going to work one day, and no one came after me. I doubt they noticed I was gone, since the school was simply across a field, visible from my window. It would have been easy to go for a few hours each day and come home quickly to care for them. But what was the point? All I did was clean floors. I was as useless to the world as I was to my family. I tried to take Nadia to the hospital, but the journey was too long and taxing. I brought her home, and she died that night. After Nadia and the baby were gone, well, I don't remember much. I didn't leave my hovel, barely ate and slept, thought many times of taking my own life. Tempting though it was, I felt paralyzed by my own helplessness. The one thing that kept me sane was my radio. I never turned it off once, even though I didn't listen to the words being said. In fact, the channel I got the clearest was in English, I think, which I don't speak a lick of. But the voices, the music, and the true knowledge that life existed beyond this violent city sustained me. I have no idea how long passed before I saw the light of day again. I was dizzy from hunger, so finding food was my priority. My radio came with me, of course. Since I first holed myself up, it has gone everywhere with me. It talks to me as I sleep and as I wake. I don't know what it's saying, but I know I would die without it. Once I had some water and food, it occurred to me that the only thing left to do was go back to work. So I did. The following morning, I simply returned to the school where I was a janitor and got back to work. Nobody made a big deal out of it. Like I said, Nadia had been sick for a long time, and those who worked at the school knew it. I appreciate that no one had pestered me to come back to work during the hardest days of my life. The teachers never said much to me, but we smiled at each other in the halls, and that mutual respect was perhaps the reason I decided to come back at all. The place had gone to the dogs without me, so I simply grabbed my broom and rags from my closet and set to cleaning. Everyone is grateful to have me back, I know. And the best part is that nobody minds my radio. I bring it with me everywhere and keep the volume low enough not to disrupt the students. No one has ever complained. In fact, I suspect they like it. The schoolhouse is not very big, but does require a lot of maintenance. The floors are always sticky and stained, so I spend most of my time mopping. Kids make messes. I guess that's why I'm still in business. Sometimes I have to move things around to make sure I get every spot on the floor beautiful and clean, but I take pride in that. And the repairs. The school always needs tune-ups here and there, and I am happy to help. Some days I'm reconstructing a desk that broke as I whistle along with the radio. Other times I handle more serious structural issues. Days when I have work like this, I feel truly instrumental, like a cog in a larger machine. How could this school survive without me? It took me a long time, but I once again feel that I have purpose. There's a larder behind the school that is full of preserved food. In lieu of payment, I'm allowed to take as much food as I need. That arrangement is fine. What would I do with money anyway? I used to bring the food back to my home, just one field away from the school. But when I started sleeping in the basement, no one seemed to notice. This school is special to me, and I cannot leave it unguarded. When I am besieged with memories of my wife and baby, I turn up the volume on the radio to drown out such thoughts. It works for me every time, except this morning, because this morning I woke up to dead silence. I frantically examined the radio to see what had happened. I honestly cannot tell you how many days in a row I have been using it. Did it simply live out its life and die naturally? I have spent the entire day trying to fix it. Most of this time, I have been crying. I am losing my mind without it. I have given myself until sundown. If I cannot fix it by then, I am going to take my life. I am writing this because the sunlight is starting to die, and I know what my fate shall be. I have thought about taking one last walk through the halls of my school, saying goodbye to the students and teachers. I know I will be missed, but I cannot bring myself to leave this room. I cannot go anywhere knowing that my radio is dead in here. There are no more tears in me. It feels now like I can't catch my breath. I vomited what little food I had in my stomach, and I am growing dizzy again, like I did after Nadia died. I am not long for this world, but before I take my life, I have closed the door to this room and stuck a chair beneath the handle. It is the only room in the basement and has a small casement that lets in just enough light for me to see what I am doing. If anyone is kind enough to come looking for me, they should not be met with this gruesome sight. Perhaps they will see the door is blocked, smell my rotting body, and simply forget I ever existed. But I have placed both my radio and this note outside the door. Kind sir, if you are reading this, I have one humble request. Please fix it. Save my radio. It did not deserve to die in its sleep, and I am ashamed that I cannot revive it. Now I am ready to join Nadia and little Ludmilla in heaven. I hope this school can find another janitor who loves and cares for it the way I do. The hour is now. Do not forget my radio. Stanislav. When Mom zoomed back out, Olivia had tears in her eyes. Thank you for sharing, Uncle Stephen, Mom said, her voice choked. I think we have enough. Wait, Olivia chirped. He said there's more. What did you find? Before great Uncle Stephen could open his mouth, the image disappeared. My jaw dropped. Was that it? What did great Uncle Stephen see? I promptly remembered that there was a second disc. This one was unmarked, but I hoped it contained the rest of the interview. There was no video, only audio. The voice that started up was Olivia. Hi, Miss Jarity. I'm sorry about my mom, but she refused to record the rest of what my uncle was saying. But I asked him to continue and secretly recorded the story as a voice memo on my phone. I remember you said earlier this year that history is written by the people who win wars. She sucked in a breath and commenced crying. But everyone's history is important, even if they are sad, pathetic people, and even if they never won a single thing in their life. I haven't slept through the night since I finished this project, but you have to hear what my uncle has to say. There were tears in my eyes, too. The sincerity of her words was beautiful. I was also flattered that she had remembered some trite phrase I threw around, because it was what my history teachers said to me. Before I got too sappy over it, the audio began again. "Fine," came Mom's frustrated voice. "If you want to hear the rest of the story, fine. But this is not appropriate for a school project." "Let me finish," Great Uncle Stephen snapped. "If it's too much for you, help yourself to a snack in the kitchen. But Olivia wants to know what happened." I heard her mother mumble something and walk away. Olivia and her uncle were alone. I imagined her looking at him expectantly. "So did you find the radio? Or did it get ruined when the school got blown up?" He rasped, and I heard the distinct click of a lighter. "That letter," he began slowly, "had a date on it." "What date?" she inquired hungrily. "It was dated 2 weeks before we started rebuilding the school." "Didn't you say the school had been destroyed, like 2 years ago?" "Yes," replied Great Uncle Stephen. "It had been." There was silence as I felt goosebumps on my arms. The images that came to my mind were almost too overwhelming to express. But Great Uncle Stephen put them into words effortlessly. Clearly, he had spent his whole life thinking about it. This man, this Stanislav, went to a vandalized, falling apart schoolhouse and cleaned up blood and rubble like it was spilled drinks and dust. He smiled at dead bodies in the hallway and believed they were smiling back at him because they liked his radio. He moved around corpses so he could sweep the ground under them. The roof was half collapsed, so when it rained, he must have gotten soaking wet, but was so oblivious that he didn't even feel a thing. I could hear Olivia crying steadily. I found the larder he was talking about. It was all pickled, preserved food that probably tasted like shit. Most of the stuff was moldy. Did you see the dead body?" "Yes, hanging from the ceiling, but still amazingly lifelike. He wasn't rotting away." "This hadn't happened years ago." "Did he look peaceful?" she asked, a chord of desperation in her voice. "Couldn't tell you. The smell was rank, and his face was blue, and his eyes were bulging. Like this." I imagined him demonstrating. "And the radio," Olivia wept. I heard Great Uncle Stephen take a long drag of his cigarette. "It was there, all right. And it was still on. If you are still watching, congrats again. Your mind is made of steel." Okay, now let's get into our last story for the night. Our last one comes from a user by the name Static Voices YT, and its name is The Missing Poster. While yes, this name is a bit underwhelming, the story is very much not. This one is also a 4-parter, and we are putting in all 4 parts here, so strap in. This one is long and very creepy. Now let's get into it. I've been a police officer for 10 years. A few weeks ago, I found my niece's face on a missing poster. The date on it was the day I found it. I started my shift just like any other, with a cup of coffee. 10 years on the job, caffeine's basically part of the uniform. Get to work, throw on my uniform, grab the keys to my sector car, get the coffee flowing through my veins as fast as possible. My routine rarely strays. I stop at the same coffee shop 5 minutes from the precinct. They know my name. They know my order. I could walk in half asleep and still leave with exactly what I need. While I waited at the counter, my eyes drifted over to the cork board near the door. The one layered with half-torn flyers and yellowed business cards. Landscapers looking for work. A babysitter trying to pick up extra hours. A dog walker for people too lazy or too busy to do it themselves. Just as my name was called, something new caught my eye. A missing poster. I don't remember ever seeing one there before. Maybe I never paid attention. I grabbed my coffee and stepped toward the board. I took a closer look, tugging the paper free from the thumbtack. The photo stopped me cold. It wasn't a blurry security image or a kid who looked kind of familiar. It was my niece, her school photo, the same one my sister keeps on the fridge, the same one I carry in my wallet. Above the picture, bold black letters, missing last seen, the date written. There was the same day I was standing in that coffee shop, holding it. I didn't have time to be confused. My hands were already patting my pockets, searching for my phone. When I realized it was still in the car, I ran, shoulder checking the door on my way out, nearly spilling someone's latte as I pushed past. No missed calls, no voicemails, no texts. I hit my sister's number. No answer. Tried again. Nothing. I kept calling the whole drive over. Each ring felt longer than the last. I pulled up hard in front of her house, tires scraping against the curb. My niece's scooter was still on the porch from the night before, lying on its side. I rang the bell, then knocked, then called her name. The door flew open. My sister stood there, hair wet, bathrobe disheveled, eyes wide like she'd just run from the shower. For a second, she just stared at me, confused, trying to place why I was there. Then she saw the crumpled flyer in my hand. The color drained from her face. "What happened?" she whispered. I stepped inside. She knew something was wrong before I said a word. I held out the paper. "Look at this." Her eyes went wide. For a second, she didn't breathe. "What the hell is this?" "She's fine. She's at school." "Are you sure?" "Yes. I saw her get on the bus, just like every morning." "Call the school," I said, "now." "You're scaring me. Why wouldn't she be there?" "Just call." She grabbed her phone with shaking hands. I turned away, trying to keep my head clear. I needed to radio this in, tell a supervisor something. There was no chance in hell I could finish my shift without knowing she was safe. I walked into the kitchen, trying to gather my thoughts, mind racing. The fridge caught my eye. The picture, her school photo, the one that I had grown accustomed to seeing, was gone. I went back to the living room. My sister was standing still, phone slipping from her hand. It hit the floor and bounced once against her bare foot. Tears filled her eyes. "She never made it," she whispered. I called my supervisor and explained the situation. Told him we had a missing juvenile. Told him about the missing poster I found. He assured me that all hands would be on deck and told me to wait there so my sister and I could give statements when the other officers and detectives arrived. Even though my sister was distraught, we still needed answers. I asked her about the missing photo from the fridge. She looked confused. "I never took that photo down. Why would I?" The pit that had already settled in my stomach felt like it was spreading through the rest of my body. I told my sister not to move and stood up slowly. I took the gun from my holster and began to clear the house. Something hung over the place. I can't put words to it, but it didn't feel right. The last room left to check was my niece's. I opened the door and stepped inside, ready to confront anyone or anything I saw. Her room was always a disaster. Clothes on the floor, toys everywhere, half-finished drawings on the desk. Now it was spotless. Bed made with perfect corners. Toys put away in every bin they belonged in. No clothes on the floor, not even dust on the dresser. I called for my sister. She came to the doorway and froze. "Did you clean this?" "Did she clean this?" I asked. No, her voice was flat, empty. Then she broke down crying. The first unit showed up less than 10 minutes after I called it in. Blue lights rolled across the front of the house, painting the walls. 2 uniforms came through the door, calm, but moving fast. One of them knew me. He didn't say anything, just gave a small nod that seemed to say, "We got it from here." I holstered my weapon and stepped back toward the kitchen. The energy drained out of me all at once. I could feel the weight of the gun pulling at my belt, the sweat drying cold under my vest. A detective arrived next, followed by crime scene techs. They moved quietly, professional. My sister sat at the table with a blanket over her shoulders, answering the same questions again and again. I tried to focus on the facts for my statement. Time, location, who found what, but my mind kept jumping back to that room. A tech brushed powder over the doorframe, then over the dresser. Nothing but smudges. He went to the window next. After a minute, he called the detective over. They had found prints on the inside glass. Small ones. Too small to be mine, too defined to be old. Outside, the radios crackled. More units canvassing the neighborhood, checking the bus stops, talking to anyone awake. I stood by the front window, watching the reflection of red and blue pulse across the street. Then a voice came over the radio. "Dispatch, we've got something at the bus stop." Another poster. Different photo, same handwriting. Everyone in the room went still. The detective looked at me. "Stay here," he said quietly, and headed for the door. I watched him leave, lights spilling after him into the dark. I wasn't about to just stand there, so I followed. The photo seemed to be taken that morning. My niece standing at the bus stop, backpack on, head turned toward the street. The detective asked, "You take this?" I didn't answer, because we both knew I hadn't. The detective kept the photo sealed in an evidence sleeve. He told me to go home, get some rest, let them handle the canvas. I nodded, but we both knew I wasn't going to sleep. My sister needed me. My niece needed me. I walked back to the house to tell my sister what we'd seen. Her world was crashing down around her. She shouldn't be alone. I convinced her to grab a few things and come stay with me until we figured this out. With no other choice, she agreed. We stopped by the precinct to pick up my personal car. Not many words between us. I looked over at her. "We're going to find her," I said. "I'm going to find her." No response. She just stared out the window. When we pulled into my driveway, I got out first and grabbed her bag from the back seat. The porch light flickered once as we walked up. Something was stuck to the front door. Even before I read it, I knew what it was. Another missing poster. Another different photo. It was from my birthday. My niece hugging me, both of us smiling at the camera. A picture that only I had. A picture that was in my living room. The detectives came to sweep my house. The doorframe showed no forced entry. No prints. The birthday photo was gone. That night, sleep never came. My sister was on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, the TV still playing from where we'd left it. The volume was low, a soft hum under the silence. I checked the doors twice, then a third time, every lock, every window. When I walked back into the living room, my sister had finally drifted off, exhaustion winning over panic. I went to grab another blanket for her. That's when I noticed the empty space on the wall. I couldn't believe someone had been in my house. I couldn't believe any of this was happening. Then I heard it, a faint whirring sound from down the hall. I followed it toward my office. The sound grew louder, steady. When I opened the door, the printer on my desk was running. Pages spilling onto the floor. I stepped closer and picked one up. A missing poster. Same format, same bold letters. Each one a different photo of my niece. Part 2. While gathering the flyers from the printer, I stayed on edge. Every sound in the house felt louder than it should have been. The hum of the machine wasn't just noise anymore. It was crawling under my skin. Then I heard a scream. My sister. I sprinted toward the living room, grabbing my gun off the kitchen counter as I passed. She was on the couch, folded in on herself, sobbing so hard she could barely breathe. I wanted to go to her, to tell her it was okay, but my training kicked in. Stay vigilant. Stay alert. "What happened?" I asked, moving toward the window. I peeled the blinds open just enough to see outside. Nothing. Just the soft yellow of the streetlights bleeding across the lawn. I checked the locks on the doors and windows. Everything was still secure. She could barely get the words out, her voice shaking between each breath. But I heard her. I saw a flash. Someone took a picture outside the window. I told my sister to call 911 and not to move. I stepped outside, gun drawn, scanning the yard. Nothing. No movement, no footprints, no sign anyone had been there. I approached the bay window of the living room. Still nothing. Just as I started to catch my breath and turn back toward the house, a blinding light hit me. The flash of a camera. Before I could react, my head slammed against the glass. I heard my sister scream. Her voice faded into static. When I came to, she was still screaming my name. Lights and sirens echoed off what was left of the window. Stay down. An ambulance is on the way. I'm fine, I shouted, trying to stand. I wasn't fine. My vision was blurred. Blood was running down my face, and my legs barely held me. I tried to hide the pain, but then I saw it, lying next to me on the ground. A photo. It was me, right before the attack. I should have given it to the detective. It was evidence, after all. But this wasn't just a case anymore. It was personal. If anyone was going to find my niece, if anyone was going to find the monster doing this to us, it was going to be me. The EMTs started working on me, but I told them I wasn't going to the hospital. They tried to insist, but that ended fast once they realized I wasn't changing my mind. After the officers and the detective finished questioning us and taking our statements, they told us to spend the night somewhere else. Both of our houses were off limits now. They didn't feel like ours anymore. We didn't feel safe. My niece, her daughter, was still missing. And the bastard who did all of this was playing games with us. We got a hotel room just before sunrise. I sat on the edge of the bed and reached into my pocket. The photo was still there. I stared at my own shocked face, trying to think, trying to make sense of it, but my head was still too foggy to string a thought together. I turned the photo over. 3 words were written on the back. She is perfect. Part 3. As I read the words, they echoed in my mind. She is perfect. The handwriting was neat, careful, almost gentle. That made it worse. I kept staring until the letters blurred together. Each time I blinked, I saw the flash of the camera again, white and violent behind my eyes. My sister was still asleep in the other bed, face pressed into the hotel pillow. I didn't want to wake her. I just needed air. I know I wouldn't be able to sleep. The sun was barely up when I found myself back at the coffee shop. Habit dragged me there before reason could stop me. I needed fuel. I couldn't rest and needed some sort of pick-me-up. The bell above the door chimed the same way it always did. Same stale smell of beans and sugar. Same barista behind the counter. Mark, I think. The guy who always remembered my order, asked about my day, laughed at the dumb jokes I made. It was nice to see a friendly face. Rough night, he said, smiling. Haven't seen you this early in a while. I forced a grin, slid a few crumpled bills across the counter. Yeah, something like that. He wrote my name on the cup, like always. The pen scraped lightly against the cardboard, the sound piercing my ears as if I was hungover from emotions. As he made his way over to the counter to hand me my coffee, he slid the money back to me. This one is on the house. Hopefully, a nice start to a perfect day. That word, that goddamn word. She is perfect. Those 3 words ringing in my head again. I let out an uncomfortable laugh as I said, "Thanks, man." He slid the coffee over to me. My name on the cup in red marker. The handwriting, it looked familiar. I had seen this before. Was I just being delusional? I'm not sure, but I felt like I had seen it before. She misses you, you know. I slowly began to look up. What? Your niece. I'm sure she misses you. What was happening? The news. He must have seen it on the news. The case was getting a lot of coverage over the last 24 hours. Yeah, I said, clearing my throat. It's been rough on everyone. Mark nodded, still smiling that same easy smile. But something about his eyes didn't match. They were focused, like he was studying me. She came in here with you that one time, he said softly. Hot chocolate, extra whipped cream. Cute kid. My stomach tightened. You remember that? Of course. I remember everyone who walks through that door. Listen, I should. You left this here last time. Mark reached under the counter and slid a small paper sleeve toward me. A corner of glossy paper peeked out. My chest tightened. I pulled it free just enough to see the image, and everything inside me went still. It was my niece's school photo, the same one that hung on my sister's fridge, the same one I kept in my wallet behind my badge. Where did you get this? Mark smiled, kind and unbothered, like we were talking about the weather. Your sister should really lock her windows. The coffee shop noise seemed to fade, replaced by a dull ringing in my ears. My hand drifted instinctively toward my holster. Do, he said quietly. If you pull that thing out, you'll never see her again. My throat went dry. Where is she? I managed. He leaned forward, elbows on the counter. His voice softened, almost pitying. You told me all about her name, her school, the way she scrunches her nose when she laughs. You even showed me this picture yourself. I tried to remember. I didn't want to believe it, but I could hear myself doing it. Talking too much over coffee, filling silence with small talk. He slid the photo closer. My name was written on the back in red ink. She's perfect, he whispered, just like you said. The bell over the door chimed behind me. Someone came in for their morning latte. I blinked, and the photo was gone. Just my cup of coffee, cooling on the counter. I looked to Mark. If you don't want her to end up like the others, he said, barely above a whisper, you'll listen to exactly what I say. He didn't blink. He didn't raise his voice. He just stood there, calm, like we were still two regulars talking about the weather. My pulse was hammering so hard, I thought everyone in the shop could hear it. What did you do to her? Mark tilted his head slightly, almost disappointed. That's not the question you should be asking. A woman behind me laughed at something on her phone. The milk steamer hissed. Life went on, like the world didn't notice what was happening right in front of them. You're going to go home, he continued. You're going to act normal. You're not going to tell anyone about this conversation. Not your sister, not your detective friends. You'll hear from me when it's time. If you do anything stupid, she'll end up like the others. He said it so simply, like it wasn't a threat, just a fact. I stared at him, waiting for a tremor, a flinch, something. But he just smiled, that same polite smile he gave every customer. Have a good day, officer. He turned toward the next person in line. And just like that, I wasn't a customer anymore. I was a hostage. I walked out before he could say anything else. The bell over the door chimed behind me, the same cheerful sound I'd heard 100 times before, but it felt different now, hollow, mocking. The air outside hit cold against my face. Morning rush hour had started, and people were crossing the street with their coffees, laughing, living in a world that hadn't been flipped upside down. Mine had. I stood there on the sidewalk, gripping the cup he'd handed me. The cardboard was warm against my skin, but my hands were shaking. I kept telling myself to breathe, to think, to do something. Call the precinct. Call anyone. But his words kept replaying in my head. You'll listen to exactly what I say. It wasn't the threat that scared me. It was the certainty. He said it like he'd already won. Part 4. I didn't drive straight to the station. I went back to the hotel. My sister opened the door before I could knock. Her face was pale, eyes sunken from another sleepless night. Where were you? She asked. I just needed to clear my head. She searched my face. You look like hell. I've had worse shifts. She tried to smile, but it broke halfway through. I keep thinking maybe she'll call, she said. Like this is all some mistake. I forced myself to meet her eyes. We're going to find her. I promise. She nodded, but I could tell she didn't believe me. I keep replaying that morning, she whispered. What I could have done different. Don't do that, I said. You'll drive yourself crazy. You're one to talk. She was right. I stayed until she finally laid down, exhaustion winning over fear once again. I watched her breathing even out before I slipped out again. I parked 2 blocks away and sat in the car with the engine off. My phone sat in my lap like a live grenade. I wasn't supposed to call anyone. I wasn't supposed to do anything. But I couldn't just wait for him to call. If he said the others, then there had to be others. I drove to the precinct, let myself in through the side entrance, and pulled every missing person report I could find that matched my niece's age bracket. No one was watching. The desk officer was half asleep. I sat in the dark, with the blue glow of the screen washing over me. Names, faces, addresses. Most were runaways, custody disputes, tragic but explainable. But a few felt wrong. Clean houses, quiet neighborhoods, parents who described the same eerie calm. Nothing seemed out of place. It looked like she'd just gone to school. The bed was made. The phrase kept repeating across different reports, like background noise I hadn't noticed before. Not enough to build a case, just enough to itch under the skin. One detective had even written, "No signs of struggle. Room unusually tidy." Unusually tidy. I leaned back in the chair. If I said anything, if I pointed this out, it would sound like pattern chasing, like paranoia. But I knew what I was looking at. He wasn't picking victims. He was picking environments. Perfect homes, perfect kids. He'd been doing this for a while, quietly, carefully. Long enough that the evidence looked like coincidence. I copied what I could onto a flash drive and pocketed it. When I left the building, the night air hit cold and sharp. The streets were empty. For a second, I thought about going back to the hotel, but the thought of seeing my sister's face again, of having to lie, it made my stomach twist. So I sat in the car instead, the reports flickering in my head. The dashboard clock read 2:43 a.m. when the phone buzzed. Blocked number. I didn't answer at first. I just watched it light up once, twice, 3 times. On the 4th, I picked up. "You're working late," Mark said. My stomach went cold. "How do you know that?" "You drive like someone looking for a reason not to go home." He paused, almost amused. "Did you find them? The others?" I said nothing. "I figured you might," he continued. "You're a good officer. A practiced one. That's what I like about you. You believe repetition makes things safe. You do something enough times, you start to think it'll protect you." My throat felt tight. "What do you want?" "To teach," he said simply. "Perfection begins with practice." The line stayed quiet for a beat. I could hear faint movement on his end, something brushing against fabric, then the soft click of a switch. "You practice every day," he said. "Routine, coffee, uniform. You think that makes you strong, but repetition is just another way of hiding fear. So tonight, we will practice something new. I'm not playing your game. You already are," he said. "You've been playing since the day you met me. Tonight, go home. Don't look for me. Don't call anyone. Just keep practicing what you do best, pretending everything's fine." The call ended. I sat there, staring at my reflection in the windshield. My pulse was still hammering in my ears. Practice. The word crawled under my skin. The phone buzzed again at 4:17 a.m. blocked number. I almost didn't answer. Part of me hoped if I ignored it, it would stop. But it didn't. I picked up, "Where is she?" Mark's voice came through soft, steady. "You sound tired. Tell me where she is." "You've been asking all the wrong questions," he said. "That's what happens when people don't understand the lesson." I rubbed a hand over my face, trying to steady my breathing. What lesson? He let the silence hang long enough for me to hear how calm he was. Perfection takes practice, he said finally. And what better place to practice than where she learned what perfect looked like? The words just hung there between us. For a few seconds, I didn't move. I didn't even understand. She never cared about perfection. Her room was always a wreck. That was half the joke between us. I used to step over piles of clothes and tell her it looked like her closet exploded. She'd laugh and say it was creative. But that night, when she went missing, her room had been spotless. Too spotless. My chest tightened. He wasn't talking about some memory. He was talking about now. I swallowed hard. Mark, she's improving, he said softly. You should be proud. I think she finally understands what I'm trying to show her. The line clicked. For a long time, I just sat there, the phone still in my hand. The air inside the car felt heavier, like the oxygen had thinned. I wanted to believe he was bluffing, that maybe he meant something else. But the words kept replaying, where she learned what perfect looked like. Her room, that perfect room. He was there. By the time I started the car, my hands were shaking so bad I nearly dropped the keys. I was halfway to the house when the phone lit up. My sister. Hey. She cut me off before I could say anything. Her voice was frantic, high, trembling. I just talked to her. I gripped the wheel tighter. What? I talked to her. She called me. I swear to God she called me. My pulse slammed in my ears. Slow down. Tell me what happened. She was whispering, she said, her words tripping over each other. I could barely hear her. I kept saying her name, and then I heard him. My stomach turned. You're sure? It was him, the man who took her. She was crying now, breath catching between every word. He told her to say something, like it was a game. I swallowed hard. What did she say? There was silence on the line, except for her breathing. Then she whispered. She said, Mommy, he wants me to tell you perfection takes pain. I slammed the brakes, the car jerking sideways on the empty road. What? That's what she said. And then she screamed. And then her voice broke. And the call just ended. I pressed the phone tight to my ear, but there was nothing left. No sound. Stay in the room, I said. My voice came out lower, steadier than I felt. Lock the door and don't move. Do you understand me? She tried to speak, but I hung up before she could argue. The road stretched out in front of me, black and endless. My hands wouldn't stop shaking, but I pressed down on the gas anyway. Tires screeched as I pulled into the driveway. I barely threw the car into park before I was out, gun in hand. The front door was unlocked. I pushed it open and moved room to room. Slow, methodical, every corner cleared, every shadow checked. The house was silent. The only light came from the crack beneath my niece's bedroom door. A faint, steady glow that painted a thin line across the hallway floor. I raised my weapon. and turned the handle slowly. She was there, curled up on the floor beside her bed, shaking but unharmed. Her eyes found mine, and she started to sob. I holstered my gun and dropped to my knees. Hey, it's okay. You're safe now. I've got you." She couldn't get the words out, just nods, gasps, and the sound of her breathing against my chest. He told me if I got up, he would write, quote, "V killed you. It's okay. You don't have to worry now." Silence filling the air as we embraced. Then a noise broke the quiet. Mechanical, familiar. The printer. It sat on the desk across the room, light blinking. A fresh sheet slid out, face down. I stood up and walked over, my pulse hammering in my ears. When I flipped the page over, my stomach turned to ice. It was a photo of the hotel. My sister's hotel room door. Across it, in thick red letters, "Perfection takes pain." I called the precinct on the way. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely hold the phone steady. "Yeah, it's me," I said. "I found my niece. She's alive. I need units at the hotel we were staying at right now." They started asking questions I didn't have answers for. "He's there," I said. "He went after my sister. Just get there, please." My niece sat in the passenger seat beside me, small and silent. Her hands clutched her stuffed rabbit like it was part of her. She hadn't spoken since I found her. The drive felt endless. Every red light looked the same color as the ink on that note. "Perfection takes pain." Over and over until the words stopped sounding human. When I turned into the parking lot, I saw the light from our room still on. I parked hard and got out, my niece right behind me. The door was cracked open. The smell hit before I even stepped inside. Metal, copper, something heavy in the air. I told my niece to stay close. She gripped the back of my jacket. The bed was made. The lamp was still on. Everything was perfect. I cleared the corners, the bathroom, the closet. Nothing. Then I saw it. On the wall above the bed. Long, careful strokes of red. Not splattered, not rushed. Written with precision. "Perfection takes pain." My chest locked up. I said her name once. No answer. My niece started crying behind me, soft and uneven. I didn't turn around. I couldn't. There wasn't blood everywhere. Just enough to write. Just enough to know she hadn't left on her own. I stood there for a long time, staring at that word. The edges of each letter glistened in the light. And that's when I realized he wasn't teaching her. He was teaching me. Okay, that was a crazy ending, and very much worth the parts. And now, as the final story fades into silence, take a moment to breathe. Notice the stillness, again the kind, that feels heavier than before. These stories may be over, but the experiences behind them aren't. Somewhere, the people who shared them are still carrying what happened, still replaying those moments when something felt off, when reality slipped just enough to leave a mark. Maybe you'll forget some details by morning. Maybe others will stay with you longer than you expect. Because the scariest part isn't the monsters, or the darkness, or the unknown. It's the fact that these moments could happen to anyone, anywhere, at any time. So when you turn off the screen and the room falls quiet again, ask yourself, was it just a story? Or did something feel a little too familiar? Thank you for watching, and don't forget to like the video and subscribe if you enjoyed it. Until next time, don't stare too deep into the darkness.